The only way to be rich is to get money from your dad. For most people, to be rich means never having to look at prices, never having to worry about money. And that is simply not what happens to people who have become financially successful. If anything, they worry even more about money because it's a well understood and acknowledged, uncontroversial human psychological trait to be more averse to loss than motivated by gain. So when you do have money, you will worry far more about not losing it than you would worry right now about making it. For me, being rich means the following. It means safety, a large margin of safety. Safety really means whatever happens to you, you can get out of it, whatever mess you get into. The second thing it means to me is to earn more than you spend. It doesn't matter if you're spending $1 million a day, as long as you're making $1,010,000 a day, and put those $10 in the bank. Better than nothing, better than most poor people are doing. Most people are saving zero. And it also means that you can satisfy some urges some of the time. Not all the urges all of the time, some of the urges some of the time. It also means, and this is an important one, that you can work on whatever makes you happy, whatever stimulates your passion and interest. Not have to work because you need the money. This is what rich means to me. But to become this definition of rich, you have to bring about substantial psychological change. And these changes will wipe out the fantasy of the definition of rich that most people have of spending money without worrying about it because you have a lot of it. Unless it's your dad's. I mean, if it comes from somebody else, you're not spending your money, then fine, okay, I acknowledge you don't have to worry about it. This concept of spending without worrying at all is an extension of a poverty mentality that you may have right now, which is all based on a satisfaction of compulsive consumeristic urges because you have no passion or mission. Now, society of today is basically built and constructed around this brainwashing that tells you that to feel good, you've got to buy things, you've got to purchase well-being from the outside. In reality, no life form can survive in this modality of not worrying about anything. Even empires only last about 200 to 250 years. Roman Empire, Greek Empire, Ottoman Empire, Persian, they all have a deadline, a lifetime of a couple hundred years. Why? Because they are the incarnation of this fantasy of not having any limit, because they have access to the printing press. And so they're seduced, just like it's happening in the United States right now, they're seduced into thinking that they can do whatever they want and there's no limit. And once there's a small nucleus of people who behave like that, the system is put under strain, but it can still survive because there are many more servants than there are masters. But the problem is that structures get created around these masters, and now the servants of the masters want to dominate a little bit themselves, and then they're servants of the masters. This is what's happening in the European Union, layer upon layer of bureaucracy, and as long as there's cake on the table, everybody wants in. And it's the same thing that's happening in the United States with all these groups coming out and saying, well, now, as long as you're the better victim, the worse off you are, or you can portray yourself to be, and the more there's this infinite bucket of money where daddy government can take a little bit of that and give it to you for free. The real price for not worrying is death. You will have to worry until the day that you die. If you're not worrying about making money, you're worrying about how to keep the money, what investment you choose, how to stave off inflation. You're a broker trying to fuck you. Your currency being devalued. Then the other thing that happens is that as you go through what you believed to be your fantasies, right? Like living on a tropical island, two things happen. First of all, you get that out of your system. You get so much of it that now you say, okay, well, what's next? That's no longer interesting. That's an evolution of consciousness. The other thing that happens is that your ideal, that fantasy, is contaminated with all the realities that were intrinsic in what your dream was. There are many things that contaminate your idea of paradise, like in this beautiful lagoon. There's a fish that will kill you with pain. It's called the stonefish. I'm shooting a mini documentary about it. And about one person per day, one person every couple of days during the summertime gets stung by one of these things and gets rushed to the clinic where they have to get the antivenom. And they've done studies where even 10 years later, some people aren't able to walk straight anymore because the neurotoxin is so strong in this fish. So your ideal of what you want gets contaminated with all the realities. Like, let's say that your ideal is to get a beautiful woman. After you see how childish, spoiled, and generally worthless a beautiful woman is, especially after you have sex with her, you see that all your dreams decay. And it's a good thing to go and get them anyway, because you grow, because you prove to yourself, yes, I can get that. But at the same time, they decay, they disappear, because they were coming from scarcity. So in the same way, what I'm trying to say here is that this fantasy of being rich and spending money for no reason, having your own private jet, this is all stuff that, you know, the people who have the private jet, they don't really care anymore about it. It might be convenient because you don't have to fly with people in economy class, but they're not having daily orgasms because they've got that. But you know what they can have every single day? They can have somebody envying them for it. And that's why they continue to pretend that whatever they got is so fucking valuable. There's another aspect to this, which is that becoming good at things that you traditionally thought hard has a way of expanding your ego and your sense of agency, to the point that then you feel like the kind of stuff that you really want to do is bigger. It's no longer buying all the shit you want, but now maybe you get a mission as far as changing the environment where you grew up. I mean, this isn't it what every single athlete coming out of the ghetto eventually wants to do? They go back to where they were born, they try to fix things up. That's a psychological development that comes from success, and that takes you 180 degrees away from the dream that you had, where you had to spend unlimited money to make up for the misery that you might be experiencing now that you have scarcity. Your need to spend decreases by a lot, because you find that the kind of pleasure that is given to you by achieving big things, that sensation that you're actually expanding as a person, trumps everything else. So you start spending less and less money because you don't need anything. All you need is time to work on the things that are really, really difficult that you decided you're going to do, that you know you can do given enough time, but you're always trying to optimize your time and your resources and your psychology a little bit better, so that these goodies can come faster and faster instead of taking 10 years. And your freedom really gets consolidated when this shift happens, because now you're making a little bit more because you're becoming successful. You no longer have the stupid dreams of expenditure. Your time has also decreased because now you're doing some really, really cool things with your life long term. And so now your expenditures have dropped to a minimum. And so now you're really, really rich. I've said before that worry is forever. There will never come a point in time in which you can completely stop worrying, neither about money nor about anything else. But the question is that bad? Is that a letdown? Does it mean that then it's not worth doing anything? I mean, if I'm going to be worried when I have a lot of money, then why don't I just keep my worries now that I don't have a lot? Well, the thing is, there are two ways to play, two ways to approach combat. You can either be on the defensive or on the attack. And either way you get tired. But it's far better to get tired by punching people a lot than to get tired by having somebody punch you a lot. So once you go into attack mode, it's still worry, but it's a little bit different. This psychological change will destroy the fantasy that most people have of being traditionally rich, which means no limits, spend whatever you want, never have to worry again. It's not even that you're never going to get it, it's just the dream collapses. You no longer look at it. It's a little bit also what happens to people who become really, really good with women. When you start out, you're in need of a lot of validation, especially if you weren't good when you were growing up. And you think, well, if I'm gonna be good with women, I'm gonna just fuck everybody. I'm gonna be the boss. I'm gonna put pictures on Facebook, all the bitches I'm fucking. And then when you become good, you start to see a completely different kind of world that's outside of that scarcity world where you're in hoarding mode. See, you want to get as much as possible because you're in hoarding mode because it's scarce. So you might do different things. You might say, well, no, now I think I've had enough validation. I don't give a shit anymore what the bitch is thinking. I just want to find somebody who's right for me, that we're psychologically compatible. And oh boy, that's much harder. But it's really the same thing that happens with money. That's all I had for today. It's turned out a little bit longer than I thought, but that's fine. If you think that this video has been helpful to you in any way, or you know somebody who might find it useful, share it, subscribe, go to the tattoo shop and get it tattooed on your vagina. Do whatever you need to do. Peace.